Hi, welcome back to the second half of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
And we're going to do Plan E.
Talk a little bit about Plan E, a little bit of history here.
You know what Plan E is, folks?
Yeah,
Tell us, what is it? It's the way the government we have.
Yeah, and it's sort of funny because you like, Plan E, it sounds like like Plan 9 from outer space, right?
Yes,
it's like a really bad,
yeah.
really bad sci-fi film from the 50s,
yeah.
right?
Plan E.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background,
Okay.
and again, I don't want to go on for a whole half hour on this, but I could.
You could, I know, but boy, woo! No.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, if
Can we show this while you're talking? Well,
yeah.
After, because this is the original.
Well, actually, we'll do that in a
All
sec.
right,
Here,
okay, go ahead.
We'll get to that, just
All
there's
right.
a little bit of build up to it.
All right.
All right, so going back into the 19-teens, the Massachusetts state legislature set up different forms of government, right? So prior to that, you had towns, you had cities, and they were,
And they could choose their own kind of thing.
Sort of, but the thing, ultimately, all power derives from the state. So you seek a charter from the state. You can't just sort of say, hey, man, we're a city.
We're going to be a city, right, okay.
Right?
You seek a charter.
Right? So you'd have to get charter from the state. Some of the cities around here actually were carved out from previous cities. Like Cambridge used to be a lot bigger. Newton, originally Cambridge was called Newtown.
Oh, were we part of Newton?
No, Newton was part of us.
Oh.
And that was broke off. There were actually Cambridge used to go way up into Middlesex County.
Wow.
And, but very early on it was sort of carved up into various little towns and whatever. I don't know when the current boundary of Cambridge was completely set. I know actually just the western edge of Fresh Pond was tagged on relatively late in the game. We got that from Belmont, I think.
Oh.
Right? Actually, part of East Arlington was once West Cambridge. So it was actually part of Cambridge once upon a time.
Interesting.
So, it was not like the borders were just set and that was the end of the story, right? But back there was a lot of movement for reforms, political reforms. It was sort of an age of civic activism and good government that really percolated up in the late 1800s.
Late 1800s.
Yeah. In Cambridge, I would say, this is sort of a phenomenon that went beyond the borders of Cambridge, but certainly in, I think maybe in a sense it was sort of the United States itself coming of age. Civil War was long past, people were focusing on good actual governance and whatnot. It was kind of a golden age for a lot of civic stuff. And so in the 1880s and into the 1890s and beyond, there was it's ironic that in Cambridge it was actually the temperance movement, which actually has some roots here.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because there was a problem with, I think the Massachusetts legislature enabled towns to ban liquor, which I think they couldn't really do prior to that. So you could have a vote on whether you could be a no license city.
Oh,
so
a wet or dry city.
Wet or dry city, right? So Somerville, actually, strange as this may seem,
was a
Somerville
dry
voted
city?
to go no license.
Wow.
In about, I think it was maybe early 1880s.
Huh.
And maybe 1881. I'm not 100% sure on this one. And so what of course happens? Well, the person who runs the saloon in Somerville just simply moves it to the edge of Somerville, right over the Cambridge line.
Oh my goodness.
And that led to quite the brouhaha, because it was right across the street from the Norton estate. Norton was a professor at Harvard, and and it turned into quite the affair, and it actually led to civic engagement because even though when Cambridge then would vote to ban the saloon, the local political establishment was still allowing it. So there was a real focus on the idea of corruption in government, and the idea of governmental reform and quote good government was really having its day. So I think it was like in the 1911-15 range. This was because it wasn't just Cambridge, right? There was various reforms and different charter changes that were proposed. And it was around that time that the Massachusetts legislature established 4 forms of government you could choose if you wanted to be a city. Because Cambridge had become a city back in 1846. It had been a town prior to that.
And how was it governed from all those years, from 1846 to
Uh,
1911?
You know, it had a bicameral legislature. There was a board of aldermen,
Was there a
a
mayor?
common council. There was an elected mayor who was elected every year.
There was an elected mayor, okay.
Yep. Oh yeah, sure. The boy mayor was, I think,
Mhm.
William Russell, whose friend Frederick Hastings Rindge gave
Oh,
the Rindge
Hastings
gift.
Square down in Cambridgeport.
Right. So
Okay.
this is how we got our library, city
Yeah,
hall, and the what
okay.
was once upon a time the manual training school as
Oh,
the
right.
Rindge gifts.
Oh, right,
Right.
okay.
So you know, this was a kind of a golden age, I think, for a place like Cambridge, and so we chose to be. I think we were a Plan B city.
Is that a mayor type thing?
Yeah, it was a mayor form of government, but there were problems, and yeah, and the problems were somewhat related to ethnicity, in the sense that I think there was an Irish mayor, and there was a perspective that from the old Yankees in West Cambridge that he was just putting people on the dole for giving out jobs and whatnot.
How did we elect people? We didn't have PR then, right?
No,
Okay, all right.
no. So it was just basically just run for mayor against somebody
Okay.
else, and guy with the most votes wins, right? So so there were charter. There was I think we adopted a Plan B. I'm pretty sure, around about either 1911 or 1915, and that's what we operated under. But by the time you got into the 1920s, and well into the 1930s, and the Depression was upon us, it became kind of standard practice to put people on the city. There was a lot of patronage, and we actually reached the point in by mid 1930s and late 1930s where in fact we couldn't even pass the taxes were getting really high. Central Square still bears the scars of some of that period where floors were taken off of buildings to cut back on their tax bills.
Oh, that's why there's only two stories.
Yeah, but more significantly, homeowners around the city were getting hit with really significant
Wow.
real estate bills.
Huh,
And this
I didn't
was
know that.
in the Depression too. So
Wow.
so there was anyway, there were a lot of factors that led to this, but by 1938, it were actually people lobbying out of Cambridge primarily, went to the Massachusetts legislature, which was primarily Republican at the time, and argued for the inclusion of a new plan in addition to the four previous plans, A, B, C, D. And Plan E, which was the fifth form, was going to have a city. Plan D was a city manager form of government. We didn't have that yet.
So Plan D is a city manager.
Right, but the thing is, just with ordinary plurality elections.
Oh.
So when Plan E, they adopted something which was like sort of very much in vogue in a lot of civic reform circles, which was to use proportional representation elections. So the Plan E option became available, but cities then had to adopt it. So it went before the voters in Cambridge in 1938, and it didn't win. It didn't get slaughtered, but it didn't win. But then by the time 1940 rolled around, when the mayor was there were charges of corruption, right? Some scandal in the air, but really it was the inability to pass a budget. They just couldn't pass the budget. I mean, they padded the payrolls, and it just wasn't even possible. And they delayed, and it became a real scandal. And in spite of the fact that there was a lot of propaganda saying, "What kind of crazy voting system is this? This is not what they did in Nazi Germany."
Yeah.
It was all kind of nonsense, but it was very heated. But the truth is, and I spoke to people who were around back then, who are no longer with us. But,
Yeah, I was going to say.
but I asked the question quite significantly when the
Yeah.
Plan E charter was adopted, because it was successful in 1940 election. It was adopted and became our rule, and it still is today. That were people voting for the election system, or were they voting for a city manager form of government? And the answer was emphatically, they were definitely voting for a city manager form of government. The election system is sort of something that came along with it, right? So that's it. So 1940 is when it happened. We actually do have a sample here.
Yeah,
I think we
why
can
don't you
sort of
show
show
that?
here. This is one of the mailers that went out. This is so that both sides, side by side here, from the Cambridge Committee for Plan E, This is right before the 1940 elections. Remember, it had lost in 1938, but it was successful in 1940, urging people to vote yes for the Plan E, for a trained city manager and better elections. But again, it's important to notice that the professional city manager was really the main thing. Right, and some of the particulars that they quote are the tax rate has steadily climbed to a new record of 43 on the thousand. By the way, just for reference purposes, it's currently about $7 per thousand today.
Incredible.
So just so you understand that this was quite a burden.
But look at the language here. They would never, this is a public document going out. Disregard the wild rumors spread by the opposition for selfish. Oh, this was not put out by the city?
No, this was the committee for
Oh, the
Plan
committee
E.
for, so it was a private, it was like a lobbying group.
Right, so the committee for Plan E,
I get it.
which was very much the predecessor of the Cambridge Civic Association.
I see. This is,
They've
because it
been
looks
around
so
for a few
official.
years.
I see.
They're the ones who campaigned for it in 38
Okay.
and were successful in 1940 for it. You know, so they put a few quotes from folks around the
Yeah, I
country,
see that. Mayor
including,
LaGuardia, to
Fiorello
assure a
LaGuardia.
proper city manager, it is necessary, of course, to proportion.
Right.
They never had that there. It's funny that he said
Right,
that.
but it was no, in New York, they most certainly did have proportional representation.
Well, how did he become mayor then?
He was elected under proportional representation. He might have actually been elected.
But now that
prior to
mayors,
that.
they don't have city managers now.
You know, it has been said that the reason why proportional representation was taken away in some of the cities that adopted it, so it ultimately, even Cambridge, Massachusetts, it's the only one that had it, was that it worked too well. So what happened?
So
in
that's
New
they got
York,
rid of it, and that's therefore the city manager went away
right,
too.
and this was repeated in other places. Well, again, it's not as simple as simply saying that there were the wrong people got elected, people got alarmed, and therefore they got rid of the election system. But that was a factor in places like New York City. It wasn't the only factor.
Probably didn't allow for patronage as much, right?
It was very much promoted at more of a, well, the thing is, you could have proportional representation elections for various seats and still have a mayor form of government, you know. So Cambridge has a combination of city manager and proportional representation. As I often like to point out, if you actually had a government that was sort of a strong council, weak mayor or weak manager, and you had the legislative branch council elected by proportional representation, that is a formula for complete chaos. It is, I think it was definitely understood as part of the plan that you want to have maximal representation, proportional representation. That was the goal. You didn't want to have any wasting of votes. You didn't want vote splitting. You didn't want to have spoiler candidates. You wanted actually how the elected body be reflective of the people of the city, class-wise, neighborhood-wise, ethnically, politically, you name it, right? But the thing is that then you end up with a fractious body potentially. So having them then elect a mayor who's then going to become the CEO of the city is kind of a prescription for disaster, right? So you had it coupled with a manager form of government. So all 7 councilors, well, 9 councilors in Cambridge, would then elect their mayor out of their own rank, who would be, you know, the chair of the city council, but wouldn't be the person running the city day by day. Otherwise, they'd be paying back favors to become mayor, and then next thing you know,
I like this
it would be all
system.
patronage.
I think it's good.
So there was a lot of wisdom, I think, in the design of the charter. There have been some tweaks over the years, you know, but fundamentally that's it. There are still some other cities in Massachusetts that are called Plan E cities, but they amended things.
Worcester has a city manager, right?
Right, so they have an elected mayor as well.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Right, and they don't use.
And they don't use PR.
They don't use PR. Lowell, city of Lowell as well was a Plan E city, but there were others, right? So, you know, it's interesting now that many years later there are cities around the country who are now using ranked choice voting.
I was just going to say, can you, again, I never get
They're
the
not
distinction.
100% the same. The thing is that is proportional representation uses ranked choice ballots. So you rank your candidates.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right, but it is it is to elect people to a multi-member body. You're electing 9 people.
Oh, it's not like 2 people running.
Right, so you're not just trying to, you know, and let
I
the person win by, you know, a series of runoffs.
Right.
It's actually establishing a so-called election quota so that you're going to elect 9 people out of that pool of ballots, and there's a particular way that's intelligently put together to make that happen, right? But the thing is, so all across the country now, there are a lot of places where, including even Massachusetts now, there's a legislative campaign. There's a ballot initiative. I think people are trying to get it on the ballot, maybe for next year or the year after, to allow cities and towns to use ranked choice voting. But I believe it's for single winner elections.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, I'd be a little happier if they also.
They wouldn't have to have primaries then. I mean, in a way, you could just have people all running.
I actually asked one of the people who were doing the promotion of this, and it seemed to me like they were suggesting that, I think it was this just to elect the nominees for the primaries and then go head to head. And this is a person who was supposedly in charge of the campaign. He didn't know the answer. I said, well, all right, this is not quite
a waste of resources. If you just get everyone that wants to say be this person or set whatever, put them all together and people rank them whether they're Democrat, and just see who comes out.
There are some places in California that do that now, but ultimately that's a challenge to the party system.
Yeah, and they don't like that.
Right. I mean, the thing is, if you're a Democratic Party power player,
you want to
have most control
over your nominees.
You can negotiate with the candidates. Don't run in this one here because we need you to be the one who'll be the Democratic nominee and guarantee
defined
election
by that,
in November. One thing where I think ranked choice voting would work fabulously well would be if you have a special election to fill a vacancy. So you obliterate the parties, and you just basically everybody just ranks your voters. There's no preliminary election, no primary. You just go straight to the election, and you do that. So no more votes.
That would be a good place to start.
I think it would be a great place to start, and they should at least consider doing that.
Yeah.
But anyway, on the Plan E, I mean, we were showing you some of the literature of it at the time. So it was established, and we had our first Plan E elections in 1941.
That's when you had a lot of candidates, right?
Yeah. Actually, if you click on just the index of the candidates here, I just wanted to show you. This is something that I have in the Civic Journal. It's just sort of a little thing. It's nothing special here, but I just want to point out that.
Is that the best way to look at it?
Actually, there's another one. If you go back there, you can do. There's the PDF
there's the
version.
Yeah, that's a little.
Try that one over here. So what I actually did, because it's now 2017, we've been doing this election system now for quite a long time. Right. So what I actually did was I actually put all of the candidates up to and including this year's candidates now. I just update it every 2 years. It's both school committee and city council candidates are all listed in this here. So they're ranked they're sorted alphabetically and then by year within there. There are a few people here where I don't have their first name listed. I should do a little more updates here, but believe me, this was a pretty labor-intensive operation to actually get to this point in here. But there are actually some of the current council candidates, like I see Monica Bowman in there. Pretty much if you just sort of run right through that, it's kind of an interesting little piece of a history. There's Dennis Carlone's name. And all but it also includes some of the new candidates.
So the more you see their name, that means that they were elected for that term of 2 years,
and I actually have it says elected if indeed they were elected.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, anyway, so that's just something.
Oh, does that mean so when there's the blank, it means that they ran and didn't get elected?
Weren't elected, yeah.
But then ran again. That's interesting.
Oh yeah.
After 4 years.
Well, it's actually pretty typical that a person runs. I mean, if you think about it right now, there are 26 city council candidates. Only 9 are going to be elected. So
but there's 3 open seats.
Like a 30% hit rate here, right? So probably mostly incumbents are going to get at least probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 seats.
Yeah.
Right, and then there'll be 3 newcomers like that. But there will be, I'm imagining, there'll be some candidates who don't win this year, but 2 years from now they will run.
Maybe.
And if they, if they keep their nose clean, as they used to say, between now and then, and build up some support, they'll be elected in 2 years.
I don't think of anybody running this year. I mean, they did run 2 years ago, but they're not necessarily the strongest candidates.
Yeah, that's kind of how we're at right now.
Right now.
Yeah, but the thing is, there were quite a few candidates, like Minka, she ran, lost, and won.
Right. Well, except for school committee, you have Fran Cronin running.
That's right. Yeah. Right. But it was very common to have somebody run, not win, but then win the second time through. It's different when there are vacancies because there are some natural replacements, so you can easily have somebody who's a natural replacement will then win on their first time, or somebody who has a identifiable political base.
Yeah.
So that already puts them ahead of the other new candidates.
Yeah.
So that might be an ethnic identity, that might be a political
This
identity.
could be, their connection to the
neighborhood
city.
connection.
Yeah,
Or just,
I think that's gonna matter, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's gonna matter more this year.
I mean, it's
The
like
connection to how long have you been here, what's your investment in the
Yeah,
city?
I've often been, I'm not going to say cruel, but I've been very brutally honest with a lot of the new candidates in past years and saying, look, you're not going to win. I haven't really said that to candidates this time,
Yeah,
but basically, you're not going to win. But the thing is that if you don't have a political base to begin with,
yeah,
or something that's identifiable that distinguishes you from the pack,
yeah,
then your chances are you're going to get lost in the pack, right? But if you were the sole candidate who's identified with something, right? Or if you are have an ethnic or religious identity which is fundamentally different from others, and sufficiently large
Right.
population, part of the population to support it, that gives you an advantage. And
What about endorsements from the outgoing counselors? Has that happened yet in this election?
I haven't seen it
Yeah,
yet. Already there's some sort of endorsements from organizations are eking out. I saw one from the Sierra Club or whatever.
oh, I saw that.
But it's funny. These organizations. We talked about this last week. Some of these organizations are kind of in their infancy and may not even last beyond 2017, right? Like, as far as I can tell, there's this group that calls itself Our Revolution Cambridge. Nobody even knows who they are.
And you haven't, in this past week, found anything on them in the web?
I think I found a name of one MIT student. Pretty much that's
So
it.
they don't have a web presence? They don't have a site?
They anonymize almost everything.
Uh-oh.
Maybe this is sort of part of the whole, revolutionary notion that where it's the people who are speaking, not me, the person, right?
Oh, gosh.
But they have no track record at all. Yet, 15 candidates filled out their questionnaires, which they spin as seeking their endorsement, which I think is a complete misinterpretation. There's A Better Cambridge has now been around for a few years. There's Cambridge Residence Alliance, so I guess they're going to do endorsements. But even them, if you compare them to
Green
the old
Cambridge.
but doesn't do endorsements,
But
they'll
they're
say
gonna-
things
they have a
about
forum
they'll
and stuff.
have influence, right?
Yeah.
Right. But I'm almost reaching the point now where I want to make a recommendation, which is ignore all endorsements, because none of these none,
Yeah.
not even the Residence Alliance, not even A Better Cambridge have actually been established for particularly long, and it tends to be a very small sector of people who are basically calling the shots. So it's not like you have like 1,000-member organizations. Sort
No,
of
but if you
convention.
identify with those issues and you don't have time to go to a lot of meetings,
Well,
you might just look at what they're
And
supporting.
honestly, that was one of the part of the secret sauce of the Cambridge Civic Association in its heyday, is there were a lot of voters, often well-to-do voters, but people who were not particularly engaged in
Right, so they
what's
want to
happening
get
to
the,
it. They just wanted the advice.
Right, and gee, I know this person that belongs to this organization,
they
and
used,
then
they,
they
used,
want,
they used to refer to a CCA endorsement as the good housekeeping seal of approval.
Right,
And they just wanted to know who should I vote for. And
Right.
then the only decision they had to make
yeah.
was how to rank. So if there were 6 endorsees, who do I
Yeah,
give my one
right.
to?
I don't think that's
Right.
changed. I think that's gonna
Yeah,
stay.
no, I think there's still a lot of people, and actually, to whatever degree there are people are registering new voters, but who don't really know what's going on.
Right,
They are particularly vulnerable to
that's
just,
a good
so
point,
you can
especially
just
with
sort
the
of say,
PR
"Here,
system and stuff,
don't
yeah.
think, just vote for this person, right?
That, unfortunately, I think that goes a lot.
Yeah.
Or they'll just vote for that person and not rank or anything, and not do
Yeah.
it because they just don't
Yeah.
understand it.
By the way, I did mention earlier, briefly, that the committee for Plan E that actually brought the charter to Cambridge eventually successfully in 1940. By 1945, they and a few other entities dovetailed together and became the Cambridge Civic Association,
Oh, I see.
which then existed all the way into
my day,
beyond the year
yeah.
2000. So I think
Wow,
it kind of was still a presence till maybe 2003 or thereabouts.
that far? Really?
Yeah, and then there was a period where there essentially were no civic entities.
When you ran, were they around?
Yeah, they were.
Did they endorse you?
The first time I didn't seek their endorsement.
Oh,
The second time I refused any endorsement from anybody.
oh. The second time? You
And the
ran
third
twice?
time,
Three?
four.
Four?
I'm a yeah,
Oh
four.
my
I admit it.
God, Robert!
The third time I actually sought their endorsement, and an inside game played out where somebody who hated me for some reason
Gee, I wonder.
blackballed me. I know exactly who it was,
Yeah.
right? And then the fourth time, which I honestly I wasn't even running, but I said, you guys owe me just as a matter of respect, and they endorsed me for the
So
last time.
when was your last time?
99.
I was going to say, it was
Close out
not
the
in the
century.
2000s, right?
And then at that point, I just sort of said civic journal is sort of how I'm going to be do my
Interesting. I didn't know
electoral.
you ran 4 times.
Yeah. Well, I like to say I ran once, I walked once,
Oh, okay.
I crawled once, and I
Yeah.
kind of slept
That's
through the
funny.
fourth one, right? So, but for me, there was actually, and I'll say this to any candidate who's watching this program, there was actually something valuable in candidacy. It wasn't always about winning, though it would not have been nice, right? It's also, you get to know the issues far better than you're ever going. It's like going to
Right.
school.
Right.
You'll interact with a lot of people you'd never get an opportunity to interact with otherwise.
Yeah.
If you play it right and not be a jerk, you'll actually earn respect from elected officials and city officials alike, which will put you in a position where you can actually
Be an
effect change.
influencer.
Yes, right. So so as they say, my mom used to say, keep your nose clean, right? Make it a fair fight, and
Yeah.
honestly, whether you win or lose, you're still going to win.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing to say, and that goes for the
Yeah.
school committee as well.
Well, I think a lot of people running know they're not going to get it, but they want their name out there. They're doing it for whatever reasons. They want to.
I
Get
worry
involved.
this year that there are some
What?
people who I know for a fact don't
Yeah.
have a chance at all,
Yeah.
who absolutely believe they're going to win, and
Really?
yeah,
Oh,
and
we'll have to
who-
talk about that after, not on.
Yeah,
air.
that's something
Yeah.
you talk about afterwards. But
Right.
as I say, do your own estimate. Say, do you have an identifiable base to
Yeah.
work from, and can you grow it from there?
Yeah.
Can you be distinguished in some way from the pack? And honestly, just being another endorsee amongst 7 other people on a slate where in fact one
Yeah.
person is going to be getting all the number 1 votes and it ain't you,
Yeah.
that's not going to really help you unless
Right.
that one person goes way over the top, and that ain't going to happen with that
Right.
much.
It's
So.
confusing. Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
more planning in future
We're
weeks.
not
I'm
going to be
sure,
here
so.
next week. It's right after
See you in a
Labor
couple
Day.
weeks.
Couple weeks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.